they sounded good. But when we got back, you know, we really started to hunker down and determine and really focus on 5 different areas, which are indicated within your agendas, looking at governance, legislation, coalition building, finance, and public education and marketing were 5 areas where we felt, you know, we could focus on, and hopefully determine and set some milestones and meet certain goals and objectives. But looking back on this, so we're hoping to do that short-term, like 18-month timeline, and then, you know, we're also talking about doing a long-term one. Well, you know, Marion had provided this a while ago, and quite frankly, I think it's rather good. You know, I might tweak a couple things here and there, but I think it's really good. But it would be my hope that at the end of this RTD second phase, that we could accomplish and reach some consensus on this. Marion mentioned there are 2 questions we have to ask ourselves with regards to, you know, how we want to govern this authority and how we want to pay for it. I would suggest that there's probably a question we have to answer before that, is whether we want to do this at all. And you know, part of the work that we'll be doing over the next 18 months will help us in determining that through through surveying tools and whatever, just to get some public reaction to what we might be doing, and really use you all in helping us build those coalitions to determine if this is indeed a direction that this region wants to go. Because if we ever get to the point of a ballot initiative, we certainly don't want to go down in flames. And we want to make sure that we're on solid footing, and I don't have to tell the elected officials in the room about that, I'm sure. But Marion, yes, thank you very much. Marion has been a tremendous friend of ours here at ACOG. He does tremendous work. He says he's not a planner. He's the best kind of planner from my perspective, because I don't have to pay him a cent. He's great. And also, you know, he'll have an opportunity to stay at a Holiday Inn Express next door. Thank you very much. So what I want to do, I just want to this is included in your agenda packets. We have the kind of a bulleted, pointed focus areas, and we also have an associated timeline that was produced by staff here at ACOG. And what I might do, I just might run down through each of them just so you get some understanding about what staff's perspective is on all this. And this is just the beginning. You know, we can tweak this. It's fluid. We can tweak this however you see fit. Maybe you can't stand anything we got up here. We're hoping we can reach some consensus on some of these areas. And after that, I would like, you know, we have a discussion about the formation of maybe some subcommittees, and which some people in this room would, if you'd be willing to serve on those, we can get in, you know, experts in various areas as well, kind of like what we did with the original RTD, coming up with some of those recommendations. First, any questions on any of that so far? Okay. Governance is the first focus area, and what we thought we'd do between now and our next meeting, well, that's actually part of it. Yes, it is. Between now and our next meeting is to update the district boundaries that we had created in the original RTD to reflect the 2010 census data. A lot of that was based on 2000 census, right, John? 2000 census data, so we'll make sure that the boundary reflects that. And then after that, we would like to reach back and look at another recommendation of the original RTD, having the authority, the governing structure of the authority, represented by elected officials or by appointed officials. So we want to rehash that again, because quite frankly, I think that was one of the areas last time that we did certainly talk about it, and we seemed to lean towards appointed, but we want to just go back and have a look at that again. And if that, you know, once that is determined, then from June until September time frame in the fall, we will look at developing some type of process for the election or the appointment of those officials. And then 1D, identify roles of the RT and transit providers. And what we mean by this is that if we are to create this transit authority, we all know we have service providers that are currently offering transit within the community. Obviously, Metro Transit, CART in Norman, Carmen's here. CART down in Norman, CityLink in Edmond, as well as, what's the Bethel?
First Capital.
First Capital, Trolley as well, was in our region, but they're offering services. Now, how would the service that they're currently providing fit into an overall regional structure? Would the authority contract with those service providers to provide the service? Would the service be potentially provided by the authority itself? I think those are questions that have to be answered as we go forward. So that was one of the things we're suggesting to do towards the latter part of 2013. And then 1E is just general oversight of the RTD timeline. I don't know, quite frankly, that's probably not well suited. It should be its own. So any questions on the governance side of this?
Doug, do we have a consensus that in the best case scenario, one agency should look over all of these forms of public transit? In other words, do we want rail and buses and all forms of buses and all forms of rail all under one, central organization? Is that a consensus? That's the ideal situation?
I think so. I think that's certainly the concept between a regional authority, that would be the case. But the way it is elsewhere, Rick, and you might even be able to help with this, I mean, I think, what has happened in the past, that the authorities, they contract with service providers that may have been in existence within the community prior to the authority forming, or it just may evolve that way. Rick, is that typically?
That's fair.
Yeah.
Now, I think one of the benefits, Mayor, too, is, you hear this discussion, like the Oklahoma City, and about the amount of funds you have for your bus system, and that's coming out of the city budget, and for all the municipalities that are operating their own little system. But you look at like the DART system, DART operates the buses. They have 450 buses that serve that whole metro, and the reason they can create such an incredible bus service is because you've got that dedicated source, and it's no longer a burden on the municipal budget. It's coming out of the RTD. So I think that makes a lot of sense when they go that route.
Plus, I think the local buses, I know CityLink is one. We are aware now that some of the funding that we've been receiving is no longer going to be available. So now is kind of the time to be looking at how are we going to replace that funding. We're looking at it as a city, but now would be the perfect time to look at rolling it all into one authority.
And your funding's going away for what reason?
JARC, let's see, there are two that we have depended upon tremendously. It's JARC and what's the other one?
They're federal sources.
They're federal sources. Do you use JARC and for Oklahoma City?
Yeah, we do. And the latest transportation bill, essentially what they did is they changed in how allocations are being made some of these programs now formula-based. Formula-based works against us in this region because we don't have a lot of density. We don't have a lot of ridership when we compare it to some of the larger cities. So as a result of just the way the new transportation bill came through, there's actually less money that's going to be coming to cities in the small middle range like ourselves. Overall, what you'll hear is the transportation bill provided more funding. You have to really look at the details to understand how that money's coming through the system.
Okay, on the legislative side, and Roy Williams has already volunteered to chair this subcommittee. Yeah. I'm glad you smiled. I was a little concerned first. First thing, we want to evaluate the current state legislation just to see what's out there. And we did some of that research last time certainly, but we wanted to make sure that there are no changes since the last time we evaluated that. So we'll do that between now and the next meeting. And then identify some legislative needs. So that based on the type of authority that we may want to form, we want to make sure that there are no obstacles or pitfalls within current legislation or the Constitution that might cause some concerns. And so we'll be talking with topic experts on that. And then, once we determine, what it is we would like to see change, we would then begin to partner with legislators to and hopefully draft some legislation to help put in place what it is we need, and then working through the process between now and I think we talked about moving it through the 2014 legislative session to do that. on coalition building, this is one, you know, John and I, we went to a conference. It was a National Association of Regional Councils conference in Denver, 3 or 4, maybe 5 years ago now, John. And there was a gentleman there that talked about, you know, the building of coalitions and how to do it. And he was quite good and left a lasting impression on me. And I think there needs to be a lot of time spent in this area, because we know that if there is an effort to take this to a budget or to a ballot initiative, that we are going to need to be able to reach. And it's not just the groups that you think about, transportation-related groups. It's others, healthcare people, police and fire folks. You know, I mean, you know, it's just people you don't necessarily think about. And you know, going out and meeting with those groups and get an understanding from them what their concerns are, explain to them what we're hoping to accomplish by all this. You guys know this, but I think that's just going to take some time to do that. And I think that work on the front end will reap a lot of benefits for us as we go forward with these things. But just as important as building a coalition of the willing, let's say, there are those that we know that probably are not going to be supportive of it, but we certainly want to reach out to those and at least understand exactly what their issues are and what the potential pitfalls. So we want to make sure that we can answer the critics as well. So that's something that we hope to work on over the next 6 months to try to get an understanding of what groups we would like to go out and visit with, and then begin to cultivate those relationships. And with those relationships, also begin and continue to build that relationship with the railroads, because as Marion suggests, we have all this great rail infrastructure, but if we can't build any kind of coalition with the railroads, it's useless to us. So we'll be.
How do we get advice on how to do that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and really, you know, this part of this commuter corridor study we're doing, you know, in the RFP itself, and we were very careful to make sure that the selection of the consultant that we had, they had a background and very strong relationships, quite frankly, with Class 1 railroads. So we already feel we have a foot in the door with these people, but I'll be honest, it ain't easy.
Yeah, well, what have other cities' experiences taught us, if anything? For instance, is Denver and Dallas, did they have similar issues with the railroads?
You know, I don't know particularly about that, but I do know that they're always willing to talk, but they don't like, they don't like when you come to them with a dream. They want to have very concrete, they want you to have very concrete ideas about what you want to do and how you're going to get there. Yes?
Well, that leads to another question, and so I missed the first few minutes, and maybe you talked about this at the outset, but if we're talking about public education, finance, et cetera, one of the elements, and I'm not picking up on, although we may be talking about something that what Marion's presentation was, that is the program, what I would call program design. What is it we're going to finance? What is it we're going to educate the public about? What is it, why the legislation? If it does involve the railroads, what are we going to do if we, in other words, what is the if the various things you've included here, one of the things that would seem to be included would be, what's the program?
Right.
And
cars and passengers.
well, where's it going? Is it intermodal? I mean, I love Marion's presentation, but I don't know if that's universal. I'm sure it's universal in terms of the presentation. Is it the program? Is that the program that we'll be talking about, or is there some other program?
Well, I think part of that was addressed in the fixed skyway study, which looked at light rail versus commuter rail.
Right.
And kind of went the commuter rail route because of the cost. And I mean, so some of those have been addressed in past studies to kind of help narrow that down.
Yeah. No, I think that's true. But you are right. I mean, that has to be flushed out better. And, you know, I mean, we do have the 2005 fixed skyway study. It's kind of, you know, it's kind of our playbook for what a regional system could look like. But you know, more attention has to be paid and flushed out.
And does Marion's presentation piggyback on to the
Yes.
to the earlier? Okay.
Yes, definitely.